You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates. You're listening to Absolute Empowerment with Coach Jeff Connors on The Sports Objective. Join Coach C, a USA Strength and Conditioning Hall of Famer, every Monday night as he and a variety of guests, including former players, former and current coaches, pastors, and others will discuss relevant issues in coaching today's athlete, with the goal of equipping the athlete and those coaching them with the physical, mental, and spiritual armor necessary to live their best life. Here's Coach Connors.
Welcome to show number 16. Today we have a very special show because we have one of my favorite people in the world on today, former Pirate and current offensive line coach for the Atlanta Falcons, Dwayne Ledford. Dwayne, welcome to the show today.
Well, Coach, I appreciate it, and I'll go ahead and get it out of the way. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I'm very thankful for you.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with your background, and I'm going to go ahead on back to when you reported to East Carolina University in 1995 at 237 pounds. And it had you in that program. I looked at the 95 Liberty Bowl program, had you in there at 6'5", 240. And I just, since I'm a memorabilia freak, how about this guy? I love that hairstyle, parted in the middle and a little thick on the sides. And it says here, and we know that you played defensive line for the up until your senior season. And it basically said that, Dwayne was not flashy. He was very successful, but not flashy, a steady performer. But a little bit later, you got a little bit kind of flashy when you were wearing that 49ers uniform, though. So they might have had to change that a little bit. So, you graduated there in 1998. Let's talk a little bit about your experience in relationship to training and then on the field and basically how you gained 50 pounds. But of course, it has you here at 6'4", so you shrunk an inch somehow, and in the later program. But gaining success and gaining enough talent and physicality and physical presence to go ahead and make it to the NFL. I know that, and of course, I had you your whole career, so you're one of definitely probably the hardest worker I ever had. I can think of a couple other guys, one of your buddies, Jeff Carr, but we had a lot of hard workers at East Carolina University for sure. Emmanuel McDaniel's another one of my favorite ones who put himself in the NFL through his work ethic as well. But we got a whole list of guys like that. But go ahead and share a little bit about your experience in relationship to your journey at East Carolina.
Well, I know when my parents dropped me off, coming from a small town in western North Carolina, Marion, North Carolina, it seemed like Greenville was as far as you could get. And, I think for my parents, pretty much growing up in life, it was all about trying to make me comfortable, making sure that I didn't need anything. Extremely hard-working family, mom and dad, both of them, dropped out of school to work to support me and the family, and an unbelievable work ethic that I got to witness. And, a thing that happened to me in high school, and I think it changed the trajectory, and I think that when you got it, you really sharpened it, was, one day I was completely opposite of how you just described me as far as being a hard worker. I was lazy. I was always like one of the bigger guys. And so I always just kind of goofed off, didn't really work all that hard. When it was time to show up, I just expected to kind of go out and play the game. And my high school basketball coach, Lloyd Church, who you met this past weekend, he sent me home one day. He was tired of seeing it. And I was like, "You're sending me home?" I'm like, "Well, why are you sending me home? Like, I'm the best player out here, and you're sending me home. Like, how are you going to do that?" And so I had to go home and tell my dad, "Hey, Dad," because he asked me, he's like, "Why are you home right now? You're supposed to be at basketball practice." I got sent home. Well, why did you get sent home? And obviously, I was making a lot of excuses. And so my dad put me in the truck, drove me up to the high school, and I had to sit in front of my dad, who I think is one of the hardest worker I've ever been around. And he got to listen to the coach describe my work ethic and why he sent me home. And the words that stood out was, "Your son is lazy. He does not work hard." And that was a tough thing to hear. And obviously there was some heavy consequences that I had to face when I went home that night. But more importantly, that was hard to take because I felt like I let my family, my parents down. And that moment completely changed my outlook. Like the next day when I got to show back up and the coach allowed me to come back on the practice court, I told him and I was like, I know I can talk a lot, coach, and make a lot of excuses, but just give me one more chance. Give me a chance because I really enjoy basketball. I love playing sports. Don't take this away from me. He gave me an opportunity, and I promised him, and I wanted to show it, nobody was ever going to outwork me. And if he didn't do that to me at that young age, because nobody had ever done that to me, nobody had taken something that I loved so much away from me. And if he had never done that, I don't know if I would ever gotten to East Carolina. I don't know if that door would have ever opened for me. And so I can't tell you, and it was so unique having both of you guys, you and Coach Church, the high school basketball coach, to come and be at the game, be present at the game this past weekend. Yeah. That was something by coincidence. And I was, in the whole week, I was so excited about it because you and him were so influential in the trajectory and where I am today. Because if I didn't have you guys in my life, I wouldn't be here. And so when I got dropped off for college, it was tough for me because I was a single child. I was very close with my friends. Everybody from my hometown either went to Appalachian State or Western Carolina. So I was the only person that went to East Carolina, kind of went away. And I was a big homebody. So I had a tough time adjusting. And the thing is, you think that you know a lot. Even coming there, I thought that, I knew how to work. I knew how to outwork somebody. I was completely naive, because what I thought was work was completely different. And being dropped off for that first time and being away from your comfort, because I think that when you grow from being uncomfortable. And when I look back at my career, being dropped off for that first time, that was uncomfortable. What you did with us every day, that was extremely uncomfortable. But those moments is what allowed us to grow. And not to be a better football player or a better athlete, but just to grow to be a man, to be able to go out onto your own. And so my time there with you was now kind of sharpening what was kind of formed early on. I felt like in high school, which I thought I knew how to work, but I didn't until because that's the whole thing that I love about coaching. And if it wasn't I remember Coach Logan came up to me my junior year and he was like, "Led, what do you want to do, man, with your degree? What do you want to major in?" Because I was still undecided. I was taking all these classes and I think it was going into my junior year actually. And I was like, Coach, if I could pick anything, I want to be like Coach Connors. And it's because Coach Logan's like, "Well, this is the path you should take then. You should go for this degree and take it." And I told him the reason for that is I want to be able to make an impact on somebody like he's made an impact on me. And so I always wanted to be that because you made us uncomfortable. The program made us uncomfortable. and made us who we are today. And you're forever grateful for that, because like I said before, like, to me, it's being out of your comfort level. It's the things that are hard in life. That's where you grow the most. It's easy for every day you come in and punch the clock, go to work, but it's during those uncomfortable times in which I think you truly grow and you kind of understand what hard work is. What is passion? What is persistence? If you want something, we carried that the whole time at East Carolina. If you want something, it's never going to happen. You got to go make it happen. And some of the stories that you shared with us, I always take with me, and I share it to today with everybody I've ever coached. And one story in particular was of the dog soldier, and just when you talked about that warrior and that warrior society that they had, being a dog soldier, what it meant, how people looked up to them, but also how they kind of policed the people, but also in moments of conflict or in war, they would stake themselves to the ground until death or until somebody else relieved them. To me, that was what a teammate was. That's being there for somebody else. Would you have that type of sacrifice? And then there was always something that was, when you talked about the dog soldier to us, you talked about men of direct action.
Yeah.
And to me, you can never sit back and wait for something to happen. If you wanted something to happen, you got to go make it happen. And it's not about talking about it. It's about action. And to me, that's something that I've always carried with me. And it's made me who I am today. And all I am is just a reflection of all the coaches that's been an influence to me in my life. And I'm just trying to give it back today. If I can just give back a part of it, I feel like I've done my part as far as trying to give back. Because I think it's a wonderful profession that we get to be a part of. And so it's something that I don't want to ever take for granted. And because I feel like I owed them something. I owed those men something that I coach.
Yes, I mean, when I first got to East Carolina, the first person I met was Henry Van Sant, and I love that guy. He had coached way back with, I think, Stasevich. If you kind of know a little bit of history about the Pirates, and so it went back a long way. And Henry kind of told me, say, hey, here's the tradition of East Carolina. We need a tough guy to come in here and make sure these guys work hard, and we need to overachieve. If you look at the schedule we play, we've got to build that work ethic, and we've got to build that toughness. And he just had me so fired up. I was like, well, Henry, you got the right guy here is all I can tell you, because I'm going to be the first guy here and the last guy to leave. I didn't even have an assistant coach when I got there. I mean, but I mopped that weight room every night. Henry told me that it was one of the best strength facilities in the East, on the Eastern Seaboard. They just put in a 5,000 square foot facility, and I didn't know if I could agree with that, but I was just glad to have a place to train and just turn me loose and let me coach. But that's where I first learned about the tradition and culture of East Carolina, and I was very comfortable with that, and couldn't wait to go to work. And then, of course, with Bill Lewis, and then with Steve, same approach. And of course, you know how I feel about Steve, and you got to coach with him with the later with the Frankfurt Galaxy, and he's just been someone who's really helped us both. So I always have the ultimate respect for Steve Logan. Getting into the specifics of your career a little bit, I'll go through it quickly here. Your senior year, you got the NSCA Strength and Conditioning All-American Award, which I was very proud of. Of course, you had great numbers in the weight room that you had developed, and I was a numbers guy, of course.
Hey, I still shared those with my players too. I was like, I know you guys don't think I squatted or did any power cleans, but these are my numbers.
Well, those primary movements were what my program was all about. So, I don't know what some people are doing these days, but that's something I always hung my hat on. He went to the 49ers from 1999 to 2003, played center and guard there. I had a great experience there. And then you went with the Jaguars in 2000, and then the Panthers in 2001. And the NFL was having a hard time getting rid of you. And then about that time, I was at Carolina, and you and I talked. You wanted to continue to train to try and get with another team, of course. You still had a very strong desire to play in the league. So you became my assistant strength coach there, and we continued to train. And then you signed with the Browns in 2005, which was great. Had another opportunity, and then 1 year then, and then 1 year with the Saints in 2006. And, so for someone who came into a program out of high school, 237 pounds, left at 290, had incredible numbers that you developed in the weight room, and also moving to offensive line your senior year. Shankweiler got a hold of you, and I did a great job developing you as an offensive lineman there as well. That was pretty incredible career. You were a tremendous overachiever, but I don't even know if you knew what you were capable of. But you certainly had confidence in yourself and had developed that great work ethic. And so getting into coaching Frankfurt Galaxy in 2006 on spring, and then coming back and helping at the high school in Sanderson in 2007, and then becoming a GA at ECU for a couple years there with Skip during the time that they won the conference titles. And I'm sure that was a great experience for you learning-wise as well. And then you said you went to Tennessee State for a brief period of time, and then on to coach the O-line to be the run game coordinator, Gardner Webb. And then 3 years at App State, pretty much in the same capacity there. And in 2015, you had 11 wins there. 3 years at NC State after that. And then 2 seasons at Louisville as the offensive coordinator. And then from there, now this is your second year with the Falcons as the offensive line coach. And so looking at that experience, we have kind of a common experience there where we had to come back and coach against East Carolina. When I was at Carolina, we played East Carolina 5 times. And I think the record there on the sideline for me at North Carolina was 4-1. And then I come back to East Carolina, play North Carolina 5 times. And my record on that sideline was 3-2 against North Carolina. So I was happy to have a winning record in both places, 7-3 record. But you know what? I felt bad in the losses. And the thing about it was I felt bad in all the wins too, because it's really hard to coach against the guys that you really care about on that other sideline. And I don't know how you felt coming back to ECU and coaching, but man, I just felt so strange. But coaching against Carolina was then strange for me because I had invested in those individuals as well. So it's a unique experience. It's a tough experience. But I always wondered, how did you feel?
The same way. I remember when I first got to Appalachian State, the first game of the season was against East Carolina.
Yeah.
And, it was always, we went down there, we stayed at the Hilton. So it was a familiar place. And then game day, and that's the first time, I think that was the first time I've ever been in the visiting locker room. But just being out on the field, seeing a lot of familiar faces, and just being on that grass, man.
Right.
Special place. It was a great game, great atmosphere. We lost that game, but it was definitely a weird moment because you were there as a player, did so much for that program, gave it your all, and now you're going up against it. And so It's the profession that we're in, man. When you mentioned all those different places, being there made me think about also. I better thank my wife again today, just because all the moving and stuff like that, and the hardship that it can bring onto your family.
No doubt.
But it's it was surreal almost when you go back and you play against a school in which you gave so much as a player.
Yeah.
And gave you an opportunity to come and get an education and just to help you become a man.
No doubt.
But like the thing about East Carolina that I thought was so special of, like, you talk about Logan and just his mindset, his attitude, like always going for it, taking chances, and his whole thing is that's what you do at East Carolina. Right. The way we work, the way we train. I think that in our minds early on there, it was all about it doesn't matter what people on the outside will tell you. So society today, I mean, you turn on the social media, turn on the news, it's always something bad happening.
Yeah.
People are quick to say the things that you can't do. And that's why, like, when you just mentioned me being an overachiever, to me, that's the greatest compliment other than being a great dad and a great husband. That's probably the best thing that I could ever hear, because that's what I want to be. I want to achieve more than what I don't want anybody to put limitations on me. And to me, at East Carolina, that's what we embraced. And it was always something or out to prove something.
Yeah.
And it was not only that as a player, but also when I got into coaching. There was always the stereotype of former players. They have a tough time because, just they want it right now. They're not willing to work their way through the ranks. And I was like, all right, what I got to do? So I went over to NFL Europe, coach over in Europe, enjoyed it, loved it, fell in love with it. And because I really wanted to be a strength coach, because I wanted to be just like you. And then I went over there as an intern and had my first year as a full-time coach over there, and fell in love with just the schematics of it, just being with a position group. And so I wanted to go that route. So I knew I wanted to work with, college athletes at the time. So I was like, I'm going to go back at Sanderson High School, because when I was bouncing around in the NFL, we lived in Raleigh. And so I worked at Sanderson, which was right down the road from me, but I also wanted to go back. I was like, all right, typically you have to go and be a GA and work your way up in the college ranks. So I was like, I went out and I tried to get a GA job. I was fortunate. Skip brought me on as a GA. Was there for 2 years. Skip left for South Florida. I was able to get a full-time job at Tennessee State. During that time at Tennessee State, I saw my wife one time because, she was still trying to start her career. She was getting her MBA at Chapel Hill. And so that was a sacrifice, because I knew the end goal where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
East Carolina taught me that. And so I knew what I had. I laid out a plan and how am I going to be able to work that? How am I going to be able to keep chipping at that rock until that thing breaks, man? And so I was there at Tennessee State. My wife was great. She understood the sacrifices we had to make. Now I was able to get closer back to home at Gardner-Webb University, which was kind of near my hometown in Bowling Springs, North Carolina. So I was there for a year. And then this is a funny story. Like, after that 1 year, Appalachian State had a turnover. They had a coach that left, took a job at Western Carolina. They had a lot of staff turnover that year. And to me, I was like, man, Appalachian State, great football program. Won the national championship, always winning. I was like, man, if I could get an opportunity to go up there to continue to learn, that would be a great step for me. And so I didn't know Jerry Moore, didn't know Scott Satterfield. Jerry Moore was the head coach at the time. Scott Satterfield was hired to be his offensive coordinator. He was at FIU. And it's about this time of the year, when the coaching carousel happens. Guys are putting together their staffs. They're looking for jobs. And I remember the coaching convention was held in San Antonio, Texas that year. And I was doing all my work I was like, all right, I'm going to put my focus on, I got to get the O-line job at Appalachian State. I don't know Scott Satterfield, don't know Jerry Moore, but I've got to run into them to introduce myself and let them know I want that job.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to let somebody else give me a job. I want to go take that job. And so I went up there. You're up there for 3 days. It's that, like you've seen it before, so many coaches everywhere. And it's hard to even traffic through the lobby. Everybody's, trying to run into certain people. And so it was the third day that we were there. I woke up and I was traveling. So I called my wife. Well, I called my wife that night and I was like, well, tomorrow I'm supposed to head back. She's like, well, how was your conference? And I was like, it was good. I was like, I'm disappointed. She's like, why are you disappointed? I was like, I never ran into Coach Moore or to Scott Satterfield. And that was the whole purpose why I went to this convention in San Antonio, to make that connection. And I was like, I'm thinking about waking up in the morning and just walking the terminals and try to run into them one last time. And Meredith, because it was during recruiting season and after your season, my wife was like, well, you'll run into them. She's like, just get your rest. You'll be fine. You need some sleep. And I was like, okay. And so when I went to bed that night, I set my alarm. I was like, I'm going to give it one more chance. So I set my alarm really early that morning. I think it was around 5 o'clock in the morning. And I went to the airport early and I walked up and down every terminal, every gate. And in San Antonio, that's a decent sized airport. And so every gate I walked up and down. Jerry Moore was at the last gate, the last one that I checked. I saw him. He was sitting there with his wife, Margaret, and I walked right up to him and I introduced myself. And I had about 10 minutes right there of talking to him, and I tried to connect with him the best that I could. And obviously it made an impression on him to where now he brought me back up to Appalachian to interview for the job.
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't one interview, and I love Coach Moore to death. Like I had to interview like 5 times for this job. And I remember he called me one day and he's like, Dwayne, I want to get you up here to meet everybody. He's like, just come up in your sweats. And I was like, all right. And, I was just starting coaching, so I didn't have a drill tape or anything like that. And then I told Coach Moore that. I was like, look, I don't have drill tapes or anything like that. He's like, just wear your sweats and just take me through it. And so then I told him, I was like, well, do you have a sled up there? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, perfect. I'll be up there. And I remember driving up the mountain and I called my wife. And my wife got really frustrated because I was telling her I'm going to get the job that they're going to offer it to me today. And she's like, well, you've been up there 2 or 3 times already. You've talked to him. She's like, I don't want to hear it until don't even put that pressure on yourself. And I was like, no, it's going to happen today. And so I went up there, and Coach had Scott Satterfield up there and had a couple other coaches. And I did an on-field demonstration. I felt like I was working out for an NFL team. And I was going through this workout, could barely breathe, could barely talk because I was winded, I was sweating. And fortunate that he offered me the job after that. And the persistence that I learned early on, and that if you're wanting anything in life, you got to go make it happen. And that was something that you taught me, that program taught me. And it's something that even to this day, I'm going to make sure I carry with me. And I hope as a father, I'm able to instill those lessons to my kids so they have that same type of attitude. And even to the players I coach, like if you want something, go make it happen. Let's not talk about it. It's easy to put stuff up on the walls, but let's go be about men of direct action and go make things happen.
Right. Getting back to, I guess this is what I have to say about the experience that we had at East Carolina. First of all, where East Carolina is concerned, I have respect for anybody, player or coach, that has poured their soul into that program. And my first stint at East Carolina was 10 years. And I poured my soul into that program. We talked about what it meant, what our culture was, the heart of the pirate, all that kind of good stuff. During that time I was there, I interviewed at Penn State in Miami, and it was important for me to remain loyal to Steve, remain loyal to the program. And I saw East Carolina as being so unique in so many ways that it was home to me, and it was hard for me to leave. But when I realized that Steve might not be there very long, I didn't know where that was going. That kind of helped me make my decision about that. But there's just something about East Carolina. I don't know if you can put your finger on it. I don't think that every coach coming through here has felt it, because there's tons of coaches that came through here, used it as a stepping stone to go somewhere else. And then some of them wanted to come back, of course, me being one of those. But I never thought of this place as a stepping stone. But I think we had a common, unique experience. I know that I'm going to treasure the rest of my life is, that whole decade. And I know a lot of other people like Matt Semenza, for instance, who feel the same way. Jeff Carr. There's a long list of individuals. So don't know, can't put my finger on it, but something about it. And, that's another reason I'm still living in Greenville here. So moving on to a couple questions here. You have been a run game coordinator. And so where did you learn your philosophy in relationship to run game? And is this something that you continue with Arthur Smith in relationship to, Arthur, of course, was with the Titans, and then he was the offensive coordinator with the Titans, and had a lot of success and gained a lot of respect there. So this is something that you have a passion for, is the run game. And so talk a little bit about that, how you developed your philosophy there.
It was one of those things where, when I did that, when I was over in NFL Europe, we had about 6 weeks to get ready for a season. And you were getting a lot of allocated players at the time. But not only that, I got to work for somebody I coached for, that I played for, Waddy Jordan. Waddy was a longtime offensive coordinator, was Emmitt Smith's coordinator at Florida. Coach Craig James and Eric Dickerson at SMU, just a wealth of knowledge and one of the best people you've ever been around. And I'm actually going to go and visit him in the morning with the kids. He's 86 right now. And so I want to make sure I try to get up there and see him. But we would take a lot of film from the top rushing teams in the NFL, and we would watch all the films, and it was all the beta tapes, and we would sit down and watch all of them. And the scheme that we always kind of gravitated towards, it was the wide zone scheme. Some people call it the outside zone.
Right.
And, it was Alex Gibbs and what he was doing with the Denver Broncos, and also when he was with the Atlanta Falcons. And as we watched it, we just got enamored with just what it, to me in football, I want individuals who are highly aggressive. I was a defensive lineman that moved over. And I remember in my rookie season, I was fortunate. I played for 9 O-line coaches in the NFL. And Bob McKittrick was my first coach. And Bob had a sign up in our meeting room that said, 1 inch of leverage equals 10 pounds of body weight. Like, you didn't need to be the biggest to play up front. You got to play with better leverage. And so that hit home with me, because I felt like I was pretty athletic. I could move. Now, if I played with leverage, I had a chance to play in this league. And so Whitey and I, we would get like the Denver Broncos back then. They would always get these undersized line, these tight ends, these guys who were very athletic, but they played extreme. You saw them just playing hard all the time. And just the angles in which that run scheme presented to the defense, we just thought it was very hard. And I've always been under the philosophy of the famous Bruce Lee quote of like, I fear not the man that practice 1,000 kicks, but practice one kick 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to have one thing that we worked, and it was the combinations over and over, and to be a master of something. And so we gravitated towards that, and we kind of just, all right, this is how it fits us. And so we would make all these cut ups, and then doing all that, I kind of learned also, regardless of what you're doing scheme wise, you better get the players to play for you. And you want them to feel like those guys will run through a wall for you. And I got to see that firsthand with Whitey and everybody that played for him. Guys loved him, and it all went back to the reason why they did was he cared about them. And once you know somebody cares about you, man, those guys are going to do anything for you. But it's got to be genuine. And so that kind of went along with kind of growing not only your offensive philosophy, but coaching philosophy.
Right.
And they kind of went hand in hand all the way through. And then once, I got to go to – and so once I got into coaching with it in college, I was just trying to learn everything I can. And the big thing in college at the time was all the spread offenses. And when I got with Scott Satterfield, we kind of merged a spread offense with kind of like an NFL-style offense, and that we kind of got into the pistol formation and kind of had both. We try to combine the two of them. And it was very good for us, and it was something that obviously we did there at Appalachian State. And then we also, when we were at Louisville and I had a chance to go there with them, we did it there as well. And it was just something that we were very fond of, and it was very good for us. And we just enjoyed it. I always looked at it like one of the hardest drills. I always like to watch the defensive coaches and what they teach, because that's what you're going up against every day. Yeah. And when I watch the linebackers do a drill with the running backs and they do this angle tackle drill, I was like, man, that's hard on the defense. That's hard to take an angle to make that tackle. And so when I looked at that scheme, I was like, man, I could put players, safeties, linebackers in that predicament with this scheme. And so I just I was very enamored with it and the results that we had off of it.
Yeah. Do you want to cut back off of that stretch?
We always call it a cut up.
Okay, gotcha.
So once they get to a certain landmark, it's getting upfield now, and and we look at it as a downhill play, and it's a fun, and we enjoy it. We really do, and the guys embrace it, and it's fun to be a part of. That's for sure. It's something I told my players. There's two things. All right, if I ever get buried, or however, if I get whatever happens, there's two things on my headstone that I want. I want a Crowther sled to be part of it. Like I want that 2-man Crowther sled, and I want something about the wide zone to be written on there as well.
Yeah,
and just means a lot to me. So.
Well, when I played DB in college, as a DB back then, they made me tackle that Crowther sled every week. So,
that's
hit, lift, and drive at the right angle. Hit, lift, wrap, and drive, and you better be hitting it at the proper angle or it's going to spin on you.
That's right. And, and Coach, you've been coaching so much longer than I have, and I'm sure you got a tremendous, a great perspective on this. Because, I'll hear comments, well, you can't coach how you used to. You can't do the things that you used to do. And I've the same drills, the same things that I've done ever since I got into coaching. Obviously, everything I've ever done, I've gotten it from another coach. I've learned from coaches that touch that I got to play for. I've always been a hand-on type of a guy. Yeah. If I'm going to read about it or try to listen to about it, it's hard for me to. But if my hands have been on it, I've actually done those drills, I feel like I could teach it now.
Right.
And so to me, you could ask my players from when I was at Tennessee State to even now with the Atlanta Falcons, it's the same drills in the same way I go about it. And it makes me think about that because you talk about the Crowther sled. That's a sled that's been around for football for how long now? And it's so useful and purposeful in the game, especially up front.
Yeah.
It's about striking. It's about the hips. It's about having a base. It never gets old. And so some of those things, when I hear statements like that, it kind of makes me like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing things but I haven't changed anything in the way I go about it from day one, and I told my players when I got up here with the Falcons, I was like, look, man, I've got a certain way that I've always coached, a certain style. If I can't do that, then I just got to go back to college.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try to change who I am. Like, I got to be me.
Yeah.
And so, I was I got a great room here, and those guys are about that work. And, it's been awesome. It's been a great experience. But that's something I've always, when I hear stuff like it, well, you probably had to change this, or, they won't do this anymore. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't really see that. I don't know what your experience has been with that, but.
It's all about developing relationships, and I just think you have to make everybody feel important on your team, and you got to find ways to do it. And when we ran those 300s back in the day, and I gave the gold shirts to the guys that made them, I made them coaches, and then they ran around the field with everybody else. That's how you feel important. When everybody else is encouraging you and making you feel you're part of the team, you got to do this. It's important that you make these 300s because you're as important as anybody else on this team. And that came from me and my staff, but I wanted it to come from the other players.
Yeah.
Everybody on that team felt important.
Yeah.
So, when you look at this thing with this, this transfer portal, whatever, I read about that. I read about these guys leaving, and then you'll get other people who comment and say, "Well, that's okay. That guy never got many reps. He was second team, or he was just a backup." Well, guess what? You better make sure everybody on that team feels important, because if you don't have depth, you're going to be in deep trouble. So, I think even with all this going on now at the collegiate level with this portal, there's got to be a plan to keep people in the program.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting
about that.
I think what you're hitting on is exactly what we experience at East Carolina. It's the autonomy that you gave us. It's where you feel like, because to me, I tell everybody I've coached, man, this isn't about any coach. It's about you as players. This is your program.
Right.
I just want to try to direct and guide you a certain way and try to help you become a better player, better student, a better man. But I was like, ultimately, this is your program. This is you out there on game day, on Saturday, Sunday, whenever it may be. And so to me, it's having them have that ownership in the program, to have that autonomy, to make it to feel like where they can say, so they have a say in it.
Yeah.
Their work, it means something. It's not just the coach up there all the time. Because I know that when you gave us those shirts, man, that was one of the biggest things in the world to us, man. It's like, Coach gave me a shirt, man, and it was just a T-shirt. You probably I don't know where you got it from, but it was a treasure for us. It
was all about the meaning of the shirt. And the other thing that I want to mention is, one of those years, the specialists won War Day, and they were over the moon over that. I mean, hey, man.
Oh, man.
We won War Day. We got the War Day T-shirts. And, of course, I had different events for different position groups. So, I tried to make it fair that way. And I thought it was fair that way. But that was exciting because for me, you better go out and get you a snapper and a punter and a kicker and a holder. And you better prioritize that in your program. And I've always believed that. I'd be like, hey, man, you should go out and scholarship a punter and a kicker, like, before you even think about anybody else. First of all, these guys are going to be smart. They're not going to fail out of school.
Yep.
They don't have to do anything all that hard, except for me. I've made them do everything like everybody else, of course. But at the same time, these guys are going to be around for you. So you better go get you a good one, and you better really learn how important that is, because they're not just going to show up. I mean, I remember a time where we had a kicker, but we didn't have a guy that could kick off. So you're catching the kickoff on, it was different then. I mean, you're catching the kick on a 20, 25 yard line. So, we got guys on 35, 40 offenses on a 35, 40 yard line. I forget what year that was, but I'm scratching my head on that. And then we had a snapper that had a couple bad snaps during the course of the year that cost you. So, I mean, hey man, those things are vital. So that's all I'm going to say about that is,
Coach, I'll tell you what.
Did win Ward Day one year, and that was important.
I'll tell you what, you could do probably, I don't know how many of these podcasts on just Ward Day and what that entailed. Like when you mentioned that brought back a memory, man.
Yeah. Well,
those early mornings out there, that was something else now.
Yeah, and over time, I'm not going to give a lot of detail to this, but I had to actually change the name of Ward Day. So, hey, okay.
But like when you're talking because I think that's what, when I look back at my time with you, I think the whole thing was you always were changing up things.
Yeah.
And I thought it was all about the uncertainty sometimes in what we were about to do.
Yeah.
Because I remember some of the stuff that we did, man. Some of the stuff with the offensive line and defensive line and just some of those things that we did, like we didn't know that it was going to happen, but that made us stronger and made us better.
Well, we had Escape from Saigon. I don't know if you remember Escape from Saigon.
What was the name of that little gym that you took us to? You remember that?
Oh yeah,
didn't have any ventilation to it.
Yeah, so I believe, of course, I coached wrestling. Before I got into college, I coached high school wrestling for a number of years, and I was at Bucknell, and I was on the wrestling staff there doing different things. I was actually a recruiting coordinator for wrestling, but I took the linemen down in that gym. I don't remember. It was at the bottom of the hill, so we ran down there. We wrestled for an hour, and nobody, knew that we were in there beating each other half to death. And it was all one-on-one deal. And I taught you guys maybe 3 wrestling deals from each position, whatever. And I didn't really let guys stand up and wrestle. We wrestled on the mat mostly because I didn't want any knees or anything, but that had value. And then of course we ran back up the hill after we wrestled. So I'm glad you reminded me of that. That was
and that's the thing. Like we felt like nobody else was willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so like when it came to training camp or in a game, like we felt like there's no way this dude is going to line up in 4 quarters in front of me. And the whole thing about the fourth quarter, winning that quarter.
Yeah.
But it's like nobody trained the way we did. And we knew that, so the confidence that we had going into a season or in a game, it was astronomical. And it kind of like when you talked about overachieving, I think it was overachievement as a team almost, just because your mindset and just what you believed.
Yeah.
Because everybody else, skill guys and stuff like that, they were busy running. I forgot what you had those guys doing, probably just out throwing, just running, working on speed. But man, when we were in that gym and on those mats, that was hard, man. But it made us who we were. We felt like we came out of it, and it made us tougher.
Well, skill guys did speed 5 days a week, and I still believe in that. There's got to be some type of speed work every day, and it's got to be first thing you do. Some of it might be tempo, it might be acceleration work, it might be repeat sprintability. I mean, it could be resistance oriented, it could be over speed oriented, but I always started every day with speed work with those guys, of course. And I prefer a 4-day program for linemen, 3-day program lifting for the skill guys, and then speed work. But I can talk about that type of stuff all day as far as nuts and bolts, but that's kind of generally what the thought process was there. And I really think even at the NFL level, you got to have that kind of thought process. You can individualize, but I think, movement and speed, linear speed, movement, change direction, all those types of things got to be prioritized, and particularly mobility at that level as well. But looking at pass pro schemes, just real quick, there's some general rules there. But then looking at the teams that you play, I'm thinking back on a Rod Coleman who Rod Coleman played in the league, I don't know, a decade. Wasn't he a Pro Bowler?
Yeah.
And this was one of our guys, at ECU, and nobody talks about him very much. And I think, he needs to get recognized more for sure somehow. But Rod was a guy that, you're going to have a hard time blocking Rod. You better have a plan for him, or, he's going to cause you a lot of problems. So, when you look around the NFL, what are a few guys that you might have to have a little special preparation for? Who comes to mind there, particularly with pass pro?
I'll tell you, Coach, it's week in and week out. I mean, this past week, the game that you came to, I mean, it was TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. And this coming week, our next game, we're on a bye this week. But just, Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, the interior guys they have, Onyemata, like these guys, the strength, like the size of these defensive linemen, the athletic, their athletic ability, just the way they can move and bend.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's one of the best things. Like when you have power, but also you can bend and get an edge,
right?
To edge an offensive lineman. I think that's very unique. And it's a thing like every week in the NFL, you're seeing somebody every week that is doing that. And so there's unique challenges. Your scheme is your scheme, and you got ways that you can adjust that depending on who you're facing that week. But it's really about those individual battles that each and every person, because all these defenses, they're going to find ways to get that one-on-one matchup.
Right.
And it's just now it's being good in that one-on-one matchup.
Right.
But what you're seeing from these defenses, these defensive linemen these days, it's very similar to what we had there in Rod. And I completely agree with you. Like I thought, like even because I was playing during the same time in the NFL as Rod, and just the respect that he had around the league as a pass rusher, but also just a complete lineman, because he was a defensive end that ended up moving inside, playing a 3 technique, playing nose some.
Yeah.
And he was just so athletic and like you couldn't touch him. He just could bend so well. And he had some great seasons. And I always thought that he was, if he wasn't the best that came out of East Carolina, he was always one of the best.
Yeah.
And just the rare size that you see nowadays, I mean, but along with, it used to be like you got these big guys that they were about stopping the run.
Yeah.
And nowadays you're getting these guys with the same size, but they can bend and they're extremely athletic. And so it's a struggle week in and week out going up against guys.
Yeah. Well, one time with Rod, every once in a while I get into wrestling match with those guys, and we were out on the field one time, and I think I might have taken Rod down, and I turned him on his back for maybe 1 second, and before I knew it, he threw me about 7 feet in the air. And of course, I weighed about 190, and then I guess Rod was about 260, 270, but I was amazed, how explosive he was. But
well, I remember like I hit the numbers that he had in the weight room with his lower body. Like his lower body was unbelievable. What he could squat, and the way he could bend.
Yeah.
And that was a special group that we had there. You had Norris, you had him, and so and even I think back to Terrell. I think of somebody else that's coaching in the NFL and who has done a great job. Like Terrell you think of defensive line coaches, Terrell is one of the ones that a lot of people are going to say like this is one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
Just think about how hard, because I think about Terrell also. Think about where he came from, as far as like how he got to school, but also how he's worked his way to where he's at these days too. It's kind of like what you said before. It's kind of like that pirate, that mindset that we had.
No doubt.
But one thing about you now, you didn't shy away from being hands-on and getting in there and showing us the way. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, Norris, he always wanted to wrestle me, and I'm not wrestling you, man. You weigh 310 pounds, and Norris was a pretty good wrestler in high school.
Yeah.
But on my birthday, they always want to grab me. So I brought my boxer T-Bone in there on my birthday and sat him down. And, nobody touched me on my birthday that year. So, but Norris was always fun, man. You always had fun every day with him around.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think that that's something that gets, you got to have fun. You can't take the fun out of football and what you're doing. Yeah. I mean, it's a game. I know that the stakes are high, livelihoods and everything, what people are wanting to get out of it. But football, you started playing the game because you had fun doing it. And you can never take that away from it. And so I always think that's, as we did, we had every time we stepped in the weight room, we had fun. When we were on the field, we had fun.
No doubt.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Well, I guess kind of what I want to talk about, we got 5-10 more minutes left here. When I talked to Pagano a couple podcasts ago, of course, it was a great conversation, and I really have a ton of respect for him and all he's been through. But we talked about presence, being where your feet are, but also process, goals, and a vision. So what do you consider to be your vision? Do you have a vision? Do you think of everything as process, goals to reach a vision, or what's your perspective there in relationship to your future?
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, like, you're so excited when you first get into this industry and coaching. Like, you're wide open. You're like, man, I can't wait. Like, I'm gonna be just like so and so. But you kind of learn, like, every stop along the way. It's not just the coaches that you work with; it's also the players that you coach. You're learning every day, and all this. And it's just, you keep learning the ways and how to do things. And the players, they teach you so much as well. Whatever stop it may be, and throughout, your stages in coaching, like when you first get started, like being a GA, I want to be a position coach now. I want to run my room. You get up to that level. I want to run an offense. All right. And so you go do that. And so, but I think what you love to do, and I love the men that I coach. And I love that moment that you get in that room with those men. And part of the reason why I wanted to go to Louisville at the time was, now I had an opportunity not only to get in front of the offensive line, I could get in front of the whole offense. And I wanted to have the opportunity to, like, some of the things I would do with my guys just in that position room. Now I get to try with the whole offense. And then now I get to be up there speaking in front of all of them.
Right.
And, and I've been so blessed to be where I am today, because that's another thing. I wanted to have this opportunity. And along the way, you get to be around some great leaders, leader of just, and being here with Art and just how he is with the program.
Yeah.
You feel like you match up, like this is perfect. And the thing is, like, I'm so excited about what we're doing here and just being on that ground, like you coming in together, being on the ground floor, building it now, but for me, I hope that one day, eventually down the road, you get an opportunity to, now all these experiences that you've gathered, that now you could run your own program one day.
Yeah.
And so that's always something down the road. I hope that you have that I get the opportunity to do so. That's something that I've learned along the process as well throughout my coaching journey. It's always got to be right for your family. It's got to be right with your wife. And that's something I can never take for granted, is just because it's a strain that you put on, your kids and your wife. And so whatever door opens for us, it's got to be right for us as a family.
Right.
But, like I said before, being here with Art and being like, I've always wanted the opportunity. I wanted to be able to say that, I was coaching in the NFL, because when you're coaching in the NFL, you're able to say that, you're at the highest level coaching your position group. I want to just, how good can we be? How good can we be at protecting that quarterback?
Yeah.
How good can we be at running the football? And because if you and to build that, and to where year in and year out, that's something that that you're building and that you have there. And then just the type of program that you're with. And that's something I'm very grateful that I'm in that opportunity right now with Coach Smith here.
Yeah.
And the type of program that he's running.
Well, no doubt about it. And, when I talk to Logan, when I talk to Pagano, when I talk to Coach Bunning, we get that podcast with all of them. And when you look at some perspective here in relationship to, for instance, when Pagano moved from UNC to the NFL, now you're talking about, Logan mentioned the NIL, the fact that, with the transfer portal, back in the day when we were developing people for 3 years, and then all of a sudden, if we started to lose people like a Lamont Burns, for instance, going into his senior year, we would have been in deep trouble as far as, some the guys that we had spent a lot of time developing. And I know Pagano was glad to get out of the recruiting circus. And so, I don't know. Maybe more collegiate coaches now are looking to go to the NFL. That might be part of it. Of course, there's only so much room there, but certainly a lot more challenges at the collegiate level here of lately.
Yeah, that's something like I know for that the great thing, like it's all about football, and it's
right.
about the culture, and every day you get so much more time with the players.
Yeah,
and it's developmental stages that you get them with.
Yeah.
To me, I think that you can never give up on the fact that, like, I love coaching off. I love and passionate about offensive line. To me, I look at it as it's such a developmental piece to it. And it's about developing the players. It's always got to be about that.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, we got these different phases in which we can do certain things with the players throughout the summer, throughout the off season. And then you go through the season with them, making those corrections along the way. It's just a wonderful process.
Yeah.
Then, like, for us here now, like for my family, like the great thing about what we get to do is, when you come home, we don't have to be on social media, and we don't have to be on Twitter, Facebook. Like, I'm being present, because that's something that I try hard to be, as a better father and a better husband.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I've really I've been very grateful for my time here in the NFL is I get a lot more time in which I can be present for my family and for my kids.
Yeah.
And to me, that's important, because that's one of the greatest responsibilities that I can have, that I put on myself, is to be that. And so, and I work for a man where Coach Smith, where that's important for him. We line up like that, like the family aspect's important. It's huge.
Right.
There's a lot of people, they'll talk about family and everything like that. But it means something when it actually, when you're around it and it means something, and it's more than just words. And that's how we are. And I'm so thankful for the stage in which we're at right now, because I'm allowed to do more, be a part. Like, I coach Hudson's baseball team. I helped out as much as I could with his baseball team this year.
Yeah.
Just to be around like that in the summertime and stuff like that, because the calendar in which the college coaches have now with the recruiting, with the transfer portal and everything like that, it's a strain not only on them, but I also feel like it's going to be a strain on the family as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to finish this interview with 3 words that that you are familiar with, and that I've heard you talk about, and I don't know where it all started. I've seen it on T-shirts that you've handed out. So tell me about the Band of Brothers.
The Band of Brothers. Well, it kind of goes back, Coach, to what you talked about, giving guys autonomy. It's about making them feel special. And to me, when I was coaching the offensive line, it was fun. It was unique. Meredith she has a stepbrother that's that's a Green Beret, and just like yourself, I've always been intrigued with the training, the leadership that our military that they have. And so I would talk to her brother a lot and just ask him questions like, how is it with your men? What? And he suggested one time, he's like, have you ever seen this TV series like Band of Brothers? And I was like, no, I've never seen it. He's like, should watch it. It's pretty good. And so just watching it and just seeing how those group of men from different backgrounds, like everybody's got something different about them, but they come together to form a unique bond. And to me, I always wanted those men that I coached to feel like it was more than just that group. It was something more special about them. And to me, that was the whole thing about the Band of Brothers. Although we come from different backgrounds, different circumstances, we come together for a common goal, and we're going to work together, all right, to achieve those things that we need to achieve. And it was a everlasting friendship. It was an everlasting relationship that these men are going to share with one another. And to me, it was something very, very sacred, and it was very special. And so I always adopted that Band of Brothers, and I would always put it on T-shirts, and to me, it was about making those men feel more than just a position group. It was a lot more special than that.
Well, I love that, because one of my favorite quotes in the world is, in any battle, the chief incalculable is the human dimension. So, it's all about what's in here and what's in here. And that's what we always talked about. But if I know you got a couple examples of that. Your right guard right now and your center at NC State, those were the kind of guys that have that component. And that takes you a long way. So, I can't say enough about that part of it.
Yeah, there's definitely a human element to that, and that's one thing. And regardless if I was talking to you about this or just talking to anybody, I'm not trying to, you put a lot in here, but the best thing about it wasn't what you were just putting here. It was also what you were pulling out of here.
Yeah.
And to me, that human element of the togetherness of everybody doing that and getting that group together like that is pretty special now.
Right. Well, I'll just say one more thing before I close. I want to kind of go to your guy, Arthur Smith, who we both coached at Carolina. I coached him through his whole career there. And for him to accomplish what he's accomplished at such a young age is amazing. He's a very intense young man. And, I'll just tell a story. When I was in my office, hearing somebody beat the death out of the treadmill out there, and I went outside to see who it was, and Arthur was out there running on the treadmill, and he just finished 3 miles in 21, 22 minutes. And he had lost some weight from being an offensive lineman. He was down to maybe 240, 250, but that was still, a pretty incredible time for 3 miles for an offensive lineman. And his response was, well, Coach, I'm preparing myself to go into the Marines. And he was very serious about that. And of course, I had met Fred Smith a few times, his father, who had started FedEx. And obviously, Arthur didn't have to go to the Marines, but he was very serious about that. But of course, he ended up coaching ball. But that's the kind of guy that you're working for. And, I'm sure that, his leadership is going to be something that's going to benefit you in the future as well. So, definitely want to recognize him as well.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Everything that Art is earned, not given.
Right.
And, and I think that every day I get to sit back there in that team meeting when he's addressing the team and just learning new leadership skills and just how he's handling the team, how he's sending the message, how he lives by the message.
Yeah.
Just a great example for me every day.
Right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up now. I certainly appreciate the time with you. And I know this is your bye week, so, wish you luck next week. I know you guys will be prepared for the next game because Arthur's been very intense since the Steelers game. Some of those calls in the Steelers game were unbelievable to me. But I was very proud about your offensive line was road grading those guys in the fourth quarter. So that was great to see. So I wish you luck for the next game. This is Jeff Connors signing off for Absolute Empowerment and armoredlife.org. And in this Christmas season, make sure we thank God for his great grace and mercy. We'll see you next week, and God bless. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Absolute Empowerment with Coach Jeff Connors on The Sports Objective. Join us every Monday night for a new edition of the show. Listen to the show pretty much everywhere podcasts are found. Be sure to follow us on social media at The Sports OBJ on Twitter and TikTok, at The Sports Objective on Instagram. Like and follow our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, we appreciate you listening to the show. And go Pirates!